Are we about ready to call the work session to order? Okay, with that, I call the work session to order. Ted, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go over the agenda real quick and then we'll go into the work session item.
Great.
The item number one, DRH 21-253, a request to demolish a garage and to construct a new garage with accessory dwelling unit. That one will be heard. I think the applicant will have some questions on the conditions of approval, and I think we'll also have a neighbor or somebody from the public that will testify as well. DRH 21-254, item number 2, is a request for a donation of facade easement to the city for the historic Tyner building. CCDC assisted with the rehabilitation of this building financially, and whenever they do that, they tend to require that they get a historic easement or a facade easement on the structure. Sometimes it makes sense in this case, and sometimes we've seen those where it really hasn't made sense to put a historic easement or for us to review an easement on the building, but we take them in anyway. So that one we can propose for the consent agenda. We are recommending approval of accepting this since it's a historic building that was using the tax credits for the rehabilitation. So they worked closely with the State Historic Preservation Office on that one. So,
do any commissioners have any issues with this going on consent? Okay, great. Let's put item number 2 on the consent agenda.
Item number 3, DRH 21-269 is a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a existing garage and construct a garage with accessory dwelling unit. We've had no concerns with the report and haven't heard anything from the public on this one. So this one can also go on the consent agenda if the commission wishes.
Any issues with this one going on consent? Okay, great. So it sounds like we'll just hear item number 1 then. Are there any questions for Ted? Okay, great. And Ted, whenever you're ready, we'll stand for your alternative materials.
So before COVID hit, one of the meetings we had was to talk about materials and to discuss if it made sense to allow any changes or if we wanted to see any changes to what we allow currently. And then we didn't really get a chance to really follow up on that. Devin gave a great work session on windows, which was very educational, but which we may want to do again since we have a lot of new members. So I just thought we would readdress this and see if it made sense or if the commission had any thoughts on the materials we currently allow or if there's materials we want to allow. What I'm proposing, this first slide is for windows. And so what I'm doing is just saying what we allow currently and what we tend to not, easily allow through staff review or something like that. And then some alternatives. So I'm really on windows. We're not recommending really any changes to materials on contributing or historic houses or buildings. On these buildings, we do currently generally allow wood, metal clad wood, or fiberglass. And then we allow the Fibrex or Anderson 100, which is a composite material on accessory structures or non-visible areas of the house. So what is not generally allowed is vinyl, straight up aluminum or metal windows, composite windows on visible areas of the house. And so options for the commission, and still, no matter what we do, we would still want the profile to remain the same on the windows. So we would still not, allow something like internal munds or grids on windows. And we'd still want that general profile to come through if we were to do any changes. So some of the options, and these are similar options on all of these, are to allow certain alternative materials on all projects in the historic district. So for instance, the metal and the composite or Fibrex, but I would still not recommend straight vinyl, unless the commission obviously thinks that would be okay. Or to allow alternative materials on new construction only. So new houses might be allowed under this condition, under this alternative, to have the Fibrex or the composite windows or another, another material on them. Allow alternative materials on new construction and non-contributing structures. This one could get a little, we have non-contributing structures that were constructed, solidly during our period of significance, which could potentially be, with the right work done on them, contributing structures. And then we have non-contributing structures that were constructed outside of the period of significance, mid-century, modern, or later. So I know there's been a discussion that, for instance, on mid-century structures, that it may not make sense to stick to our strict requirements for windows or siding, for that matter, and maybe allow more flexibility on that. But that kind of could get into the weeds, as we review structures, defining what a structure exactly is. So I think, it could get a little more complicated, but if it's something that made sense, we could certainly, staff could work on drafting up some specific standards. And then the other one is to no changes to current policy, that everything's fine the way we allow it now. So, you can either, you don't necessarily need to make decisions on this. Now you could, if you want, if there's something you do want to allow, and you want to vote on it. But we can just kind of mull this over and then address it another time. Next month, we have something on our schedule for the work session, so it'd have to be after that. But it's certainly something we can discuss. And if the commission feels strongly about something, we can make a change. So,
Go ahead.
Are there specific materials that people are requesting that you see over and over again that are some of those alternative ones?
mostly it's the composite, the Fibrex type of Anderson 100 is what people want to, well, they want to install vinyl, but people are beginning to understand that's not going to happen. So the Fibrex, and I get the argument that vinyl has come a long way, and then the vinyl, essentially can be made to have the same profiles, but so it's mostly, I think, the Fibrex they want to put around the entire house is the big one. And that's probably it, I would say, for the materials we're seeing as far as windows, as far as what people are trying to press outside of vinyl. So, and right now we do allow that on, a new accessory structure, or like on the non-primary areas of a building. So,
Madam Chair, I want to speak to a kind of before COVID start. This is kind of what we're getting back to. I feel like this is a meeting we had 18 months ago or even more, where we decided to start addressing or looking at some of these requests as a commission and try to figure out where to go. I gave part one of a 2-part window presentation, and I'm definitely happy to redo that again if we'd like. But for the new commissioners, I guess is why I'm speaking, is this was something that we're just getting started with discussing because of requests from builders, homeowners, architects for different materials. So we were beginning to get educated on how this works, what materials can be used or are suggested to be used in historic districts, and where does Boise fit in. So For those that are new, this is kind of a reopening the discussion. I don't think we're looking for a decision tonight, but it could be. But I think there's a lot to be learned, and I think some work sessions would be great. If I would have one suggestion, I would like to see a presentation. And Ashley, I don't know if this is from the right place. I don't know if it's from SHPO or from someone from the Interior, the National Park Service, or something that kind of gives us, maybe suggest us as a baseline of what we're working with. Because as a city, when we created the current guidelines, I mean, we've gotten pretty far away in a lot of items from what is used in other historic districts nationwide. So we've watered it down a little bit already. So it'd be nice to know, especially for the new commissioners, what is the watered down part isn't the baseline. What is the baseline? And then as we get educated on these materials, I think it would be easier for us as a commission to make some decisions. So I'm lobbying for some more education. I think it'd be great for all of us.
I can chime in. I know the baseline for a lot of other cities, they're comparable to Boise. It's a lot higher. They're not allowing fiberglass windows in their historic districts. They're sticking to wood, metal clad wood, and that's if they allow the replacement. A lot of these larger cities and cities comparable to Boise actually do not allow straight up window replacements. They actually have to get somebody to come in, look at the window that is not biased, that's going to sell you a window, and say, does this window really need replaced, or should we be holding the standards of you retain, you protect, you repair, and then you replace? And I think that's really important for the facade and the sides of the buildings, because that really affects the character of the house or the commercial building that we're looking at. And I think every time we water it down, we're allowing for some of these buildings to become non-contributing structures. And Idaho state law states that you have to have a building or a district that is eligible for listing in the National Register to have historic districts at the local level. So I think if we keep watering it down, we're going to get to that point where we don't have a historic district. And it's these incremental cumulative changes that we keep allowing that will affect our historic districts in the long term. So
I would just add on the fiberglass thing that it does get confusing for staff when we're inspecting, and sometimes it's hard to tell a fiberglass window from a Fibrex window for the non-window professional, when you're looking at them. That part of it does get a little confusing. Allowing just wood or metal clad wood would probably be a better, would be more straightforward anyway. So
We want to make it easier for everybody, the public, the staff. It'd be great if we could. So
yeah, and I don't know if it's a cost thing. I've heard fiberglass can be just as expensive as wood or metal clad, but
it can be.
So
I'll volunteer to do a window presentation again.
So anyway, I just had a graphic here I pulled from a website showing wood, vinyl, fiberglass, and aluminum, and kind of the profiles, and gives some more details on what they do and don't do. So siding's the same, similar idea here. We right now allow real, actual solid wood siding or smooth fibrous cement, and we also allow stucco, but we do not allow vinyl, metal, or a particle board type of siding or composite siding. So similar options that we would throw out on that. And again, the options run the gamut of allowing wholesale change or allowing no change. So the first one is just allow changes of allow an alternative material throughout the historic district. Still, maybe, just and just whatever would make sense or not make sense as far as that goes. It's really may not even be an option, but it's an option we have to throw out, as part of the entire gambit of options. So, and then allow alternative materials on new construction only. The idea that it's a new house, and so it's a product of its time. Can it or should it be using materials that are also a product of its time? Right now, even on a new house, we do limit the materials to what you see up there. And then alternative materials, again, on new construction or non-contributing or certain non-contributing structures as well, or no changes to the current policy. So those are kind of the options there for that. And again, don't have to make any decisions tonight. It's just something out there to start thinking about as we move forward. Do we want to strengthen up, pull back on what we allow, or do we want to allow more flexibility? As staff, we get hammered from both sides on that. We obviously get a lot of people that get mad because the limited products we do allow or require are more expensive. And so, we hear about that, or they don't want to use them. We have an example there, the diamond coat, which you may be hearing next month from an applicant. And then we get it from the other side too, that we're too permissive on what we allow as a historic district. So not everybody's going to be happy with any decision we make. And then there's just some of the siding materials, the metal, engineered wood. So the only thing we allow now is real wood and the fiber cement and stucco.
And that's real stucco too, right? Not
Yeah, real stucco.
real stucco,
Yeah.
which is a significant detail, actually.
Yeah. And then roofing materials, which is a little less, you don't see this as much, but right now we really just allow asphalt, composite, wood, or ceramic slate. And most of the time people are just putting re-roofing with asphalt, composite shingle. Metal has been allowed on new construction and on garages. For new houses and new garages. So that we do make some exceptions with the metal roofs. What we don't allow is the PVC plastic kind of roofs or faux materials like fake slate, something like that. The commission has denied in the past. So we don't generally just allow that. So again, the options again are the same. Allow something new out there, or allow it on new construction, or or just keep our current policy. And that's about all I had as far as the materials go. Just to kind of open up discussion with the commission and some thoughts on how we want to move forward. And like I said, you can make a decision or not tonight, or we can hold off to another meeting.
Ashley, who would we go to get some baseline education? Would that be Preservation Idaho? Who would that be?
It would be the State Historic Preservation Office. Dan Everhart is our outreach historian, he's architectural historian. So He'd probably be the one to do a presentation about acceptable materials and things like that.
Okay.
And the
He's
baseline.
done one in the past, or several in the past, hasn't he?
Yeah, he spoke with the commission in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He has spoke, we've had Chappelle speak a couple of times with the commissioners in the past on various things, so.
How do the newer commissioners feel? Would you guys like some additional education before we have conversations, I guess, about potential changes?
I
Yeah,
would.
okay.
Yeah. I think it would be helpful.
Maybe we could get Dan to come in. Again, we have our work session already has something next month. But I think September is probably free if Dan has the time or be willing to come in.
I would also suggest him going over like the standards for rehabilitation first before diving into some of these like alternative materials, just so we have that baseline.
Yeah. Okay.
And are we gonna look at any kind of alternative measures for like solar panels and things like that we've been seeing more requests to have them on sides that they kind of aren't allowed, and then we had those tiles that look like slate kind of.
Yeah, that's another
Tesla ones.
discussion for sure. The city leadership would like to make those kind of things more seamless, even in the historic districts. So allowing sustainable technologies to be more easily allowed on in the historic districts. So the solar panels, which we do solar panels administratively right now. And I think the push is to not even review them in the future, but I'm not sure if that's the case, but that is what we've heard. Similar with the solar roof. I mean, we did have a solar roof come before you guys. I think that's the first time we've ever seen that. And the commission was overwhelmingly in support of that on a contributing house. So that might be something we can make, easier, I guess, for applicants in the historic districts to pursue.
Because that kind of fits under the alternate roofing materials, since it pretty
Yeah.
much covers the whole roof.
Definitely. Yeah. So sustainable technologies are a discussion as well that we can have along with this for sure.
Ted, is there any in the future? I mean, are they going to be redoing the design guidelines and updating them? Or are they waiting for like more survey? Because if they do more survey and then you're looking at mid-century houses and you are looking at a whole other gamut of materials and things like that, that would have to be updated too. So, or included.
Yeah. The city leadership has said at this point they don't want to do any more they don't want to do any resurveying of the historic districts. So as far as that goes, we won't be doing resurveying, but it is on my list of goals to update our guidelines, revamp our guidelines, and also the two main things that we were starting the process of before COVID hit and our budgets kind of got pulled back. We're updating our guidelines and a new plan, a new citywide historic preservation plan. We're operating off of a very old plan right now. So those are two things we need to do. I think the guidelines are probably a priority to update the guidelines. So that'll be, once we get the go ahead and we can start using our budget again and hire a consultant and meet with them, we plan on proceeding with that.
So just a comment on that too, like there's updating the guidelines, which is actually adoptable by city council.
Mhm.
And then there's these discussions, which we're having today, which we can make changes while not changing the guidelines. It would be changes based on conditions. So like
Right.
these, right? Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, so another thing that'll be coming before you that is approved by council is we're revamping the matrix on how we make decisions on things too. So that'll also be another item that we bring before you and that we want to, and that'll have to, that'll be going to city council because it's kind of a appendix to the code and it's referenced in code. So that's a city council thing. The guidelines are essentially referenced in the comprehensive plan. So that is also a city council approval thing. These materials are more, they're not set in stone really anywhere. It's more of just a determination by the commission. So the materials that we allow now are materials that the commissions of the past, before I was here, wanted to see in place. And we've had this discussion, before on material changes and stuff, but these are the materials that past commissions have wanted to see limited to, is what we're seeing now. So we're just coming back around, seeing if that needs to be changed. But that is a commission decision and we wouldn't go to city council with that.
I'm happy that we're coming back around to it,
Yeah.
including our Jimmy John's dinner.
I would say that, and we're a few minutes from starting, but I would say that we did, city council a few years ago directed us to allow more flexibility on materials and, for instance, allowing Fibrex is a material that's allowed completely in the historic districts. However, we did talk to SHPO and SHPO said that that's not appropriate on contributing houses. So, and we had to kind of pull back on that. And the commission actually supported it. We had somebody presenting on it and the commission, they were presenting that it was very much the same as fiberglass, but just a different material product. But if we, the argument was if we allow fiberglass, we should be allowing Fibrex or composite. So the commission voted to allow that. And before we went to city council, we spoke with SHPO and SHPO was not on board with that at all. And so we pulled back on that and didn't take that part to city council. So that's that. I bring that up because if we were to loosen up too much, then we would hear from SHPO that we're doing something inappropriate in historic districts.
Okay. Are there any last questions? We have about 2 minutes. So if not, we'll go ahead and end the work session, take a quick bathroom break, and then we'll start the hearing.
Thank you, Ted.
camera, right? Yep, okay. Good evening. Today is the 26th of July, 2021. This is the scheduled time and place for the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. I'm Chairperson Montoto, and I now call the meeting to order. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Here.
Kosky,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Malloy,
Here.
Leap,
Here.
Montoto,
Here.
Kintai.
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Ted for our virtual introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Historic Preservation Commission meeting. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. You'll be promoted to panelist and will rejoin the meeting after a slight delay. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in the code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as in-person hearings, except we might have a bit of a delay as we work with the new technology. Please be courteous and patient with us while we venture through this virtual format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ted. Have all commission members had a chance to review the minutes from the June 28th, 2021 meeting? Does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes?
Nope.
Hearing none, I will now take a motion on the June 28th, 2021 minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Kosky. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Kosky,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Leap,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. I believe we have 2 possible items for the consent agenda this evening, beginning with item number 2, DRH 21-00254. Michael Hormachea at 1010 West Main Street. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? Is the applicant present?
I am here virtually. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Ted, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? Seeing none and based on the representation of the applicant and lack of opposition, item DRH 21-00254 will be placed on the consent agenda. The next item we have on the consent agenda is item number 3, DRH 21-00269, Steve Trout at 812 West Brumbach. Does the commission have any questions on this matter? Is the applicant present?
Yes, this is Eamon Park representing Steve Trout and Trout Architects.
Hi, are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
We are.
Thank you. Ted, was there any written opposition to this matter?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Thank you. Is there anyone present tonight wishing to testify against this matter? Seeing none and based on the representation of the applicant and lack of opposition, item DRH 21-00269 will be placed on the consent agenda. I move that the consent agenda and all items on the consent agenda be approved subject to all the findings and conclusions and conditions of approval agreed upon for each application. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Kosky,
Aye.
Weaver,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Leap,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Gintei.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Anyone who is here for consent agenda items, you are free to go. And we are going to move on to the remaining item on our agenda this evening, and that is item number 1, TRH 21-00253, Deb Leach at 1505 North 21st Street. Ted, can we please have the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The item is a certificate of appropriateness request to construct a new garage with accessory dwelling unit in an R1CH single family residential historic overlay zone in the expanded North End Historic District. The property, the house is considered contributing. This is an aerial of the property. It is a standard sized interior lot. The main structure is here, and then the existing garage is back in this southwest corner. This is a site plan showing the new structure, which will be located more to the north section of the property. And then the driveway is here. The garage is proposing a 0 rear setback, which could be allowed if the structure was under 1,000 square feet. The structure, however, as provided in the plans, does exceed 1,000 square feet total, upstairs and downstairs. So as such, it would need to meet a 15-foot rear setback or obtain a variance. But to get a variance, there would have to be an identified hardship associated with the reason to not meet that 15-foot setback. So as it is, the garage is located in a way that does not comply unless it is decreased to 1,000 square feet or under. These are elevations of the garage. The design is generally compatible with the property and the district. The structure is proposed to be 25 feet to the peak. These are some photos of the house and then photos of the alley. As you can see, there are other larger garages along that alley. So the garage is proposed to be about 3 feet taller than the house. As we've seen the past few meetings, staff has recommended approval of garages that are taller than the house. But that is typically when the house is so small that it can't really accommodate a garage with an ADU on top without exceeding the height. In this case, with a 22-foot high house, it seems that a garage and ADU could be constructed to accommodate that 22 feet maximum height. And so staff did add a condition of approval that it not exceed the height of the house. And then as we discussed, the garage ADU is over 1,000 square feet total, which requires that 15-foot rear setback. So it'll have to be either reduced to 1,000 square feet or under, or set back that 15 feet. So with those conditions of approval, staff recommends approval of DRH 21-253. If the commission decides to uphold the conditions of approval, the applicant could come back to staff with revised drawings of showing the garage to meet setbacks and to not exceed the height of the house. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Kosky?
I don't have a question, except that I need to state that I need to recuse myself from this item. Just so I want to state that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no questions for Ted, is the applicant present?
Yes.
Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
My name is Deb Leach, residing at 11910 West Pepperstone Street, Boise, Idaho, 83709. I just want to thank you guys for hearing this proposal for this ADU/garage down at 1505 North 21st Street. I agree with almost all of the said recommended conditions for approval. The only one that I will ask leniency is on the height. In relationship to the main house, it's 25 feet to the peak on the proposed structure. And 22 feet to the peak on the existing structure. The existing structure, we tried as much as we could to keep the same guidelines to make that conforming. And the only way to do that was to, the original house is a 12-12. So we made it 12-12 too on that ADU. That being said, I would move that peak down if needed, but I will ask for some leniency. The sight lines, even if you're standing on the main road or even on the other side of the street, walking on the other side of the sidewalk, due to the setbacks and the setback from the main house and the ADU and garage, it would be impossible to even see that peak. That peak is also about probably 3% of the total mass. It's just a little kind of, I don't know, maybe about 4 feet wide section that goes above 22 feet. So I'm asking for some lenience on that. As far as the setbacks on the alley, we are going to move that back 15 feet. That was just a slip up from the architect, being that, you know, over 1,000 feet makes sense. The location of the garage is something that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, why we chose that side. There's a large ash tree, probably about 80 to 100 feet on the southwest corner of that property. And the existing garage that was there was getting cracked from the ash tree. It's always my opinion and my diligence to try to save those large trees, especially in the historical district. And in order to do so, we chose that northwest corner. I have had a certified arborist come down and look at that tree just to check out and see where we were putting that foundation, if that would kill the tree, because obviously that would defeat our purpose and possibly cause some injury to others' property. He did state that it should be fine where we had the foundation digging all the way down to 3 feet and shouldn't have any problems. So that's why we chose that location on that site plan as far as the garage. Other than that, it's our intent and it's the homeowner's intent to comply with all those conditions of approval. And just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Is the Registered Neighborhood Association here to testify?
Good evening.
Registered Neighborhood Association?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. This is Kate Henwood, 1116 North 12th Street. So we are here tonight to express multiple concerns with this project, several which have been surfaced by staff and also the homeowner who I know submitted a letter and in the packet. So to begin, we object to the proposed size of the structure. The height is significantly greater than that of the original home. And, you know, guidelines say the main house should not be subordinate to any accessory building. I know the applicant's asking for leniency here, but we would not be in favor of granting that. I agree with the applicant that the ADU would not be clearly visible from 19th Street just due to the side setbacks of this property and the homes to either side of it, but it will occupy a huge amount of visual space that is currently wide open as you travel to the south of the property on Heron. Code limits an ADU to 10% of the lot size. So in this case, 6,100 square feet or 700 square feet, whichever is less. These plans obviously far exceed that, as well as the 1,000 square foot threshold that then requires more conservative setbacks. A setback that, if enforced, which it sounds like they're planning to comply with, would make this structure even more intrusive on the home to the north. which leads me to my next concern, which is that beyond that, code says the design of the accessory dwelling unit must be compatible with the existing neighborhood by taking into account height, bulk, and site location. So to put a 1,400 square foot ADU looming over a 900 square foot house feels counter to that. And here I'm referring to the home next door directly to the north. So the home that just sits right across the fence from where this structure would be. The design includes a large storage area labeled as unlivable on the ground floor, but the French doors and lighting do feel somewhat suspect, and we feel invite the unpermitted addition of a second bedroom, which comes with its own set of requirements such as parking and impact fees, which would surely be skirted. We propose the removal of this space as well as the living space above to eliminate the potential for illegal use and further degradation of the historic district, as well as to simply bring down the overall size of this structure. I know the applicant addressed the giant gorgeous ash tree on this property, but this is still a major concern to us. To build a two-story structure on the rear of this property would require a massive trimming of its canopy. The tree will not only look odd and unbalanced, but we have concerns that this degree of limb removal could jeopardize the health of the tree. I know the arborist addressed the potential impact of a foundation on the root system, but we would respectfully ask that an arborist weigh in on the required limb trimming, because there's just, the canopy of this tree covers the entire rear of this property. So to build a second story would surely be in conflict with the current canopy coverage. It's frustrating that many of these concerns go beyond issues specific to historic district guidelines and that many are simply out of sync with city code. Sadly, this does not feel like a thoughtful design put forth in the spirit of adding to the character and integrity of the North End, but rather an attempt to try to push through as much as possible to make as much money as possible with little regard for the neighbors, neighborhood, or trees. Applications such as these will not be embraced by our committee and will only be supported if the above concerns are addressed and eliminated. Thank you, Commission, for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Henwood. Looks like we have two individuals signed up to testify. So we'll start with Tammy Springer. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Springer. I live at 1519 North 21st Street. It's actually on the same block and same side of the block as what this house is. And we're just 3 doors down. So thank you, Kate. This was actually a lot of these same concerns that she had brought up were my concerns as well. I admit to being a recovering attorney. I say that in jest, but truly, I can't stop kind of thinking about these things myself. This commission granted us the ability to build an ADU just a few doors down, just about 3 years ago. And so I went through all of these guidelines. I've been through and testified here on other people's projects, usually in support. I believe in ADUs. I think that they make a lot of sense. But in this particular circumstance, I think that they don't. And I wanted to bring up just a couple of additional points that I don't think have quite been hit on here. Again, coming from, forgive the recovering attorney bit, because I swear it's been about 10 years since I've last practiced. So if I'm a little bit nervous too, that's part of it. So looking back and thinking back to when the ADU ordinance was initially adopted, it was all about sustainability of the neighborhood. So 4 of the stated goals were to provide more affordable housing, to provide density with minimal costs and disruption or impact, allow individuals in smaller households to retain larger residences. That's what we needed to do. Partially, especially, we couldn't buy into our neighborhood now if we tried. And then maintain the single family characters of the home. So looking back at the use regulation, so this is ordinance 11603, subpart 6. So this is under use regulations and residential use standards. They don't meet it. I don't know how often that this particular commission has heard of a designer coming in, but just a little bit more about this. If you look at who the actual owner of the home is, it's Taylor Jean Homes, Inc. A quick Google search tells you that they have remodeled no fewer than 8 different homes. This would be their 9th. One of those homes being 2 doors down that they sold for over $1 million. This home was bought and completely gutted, and I understand through word of mouth, was purchased for a little bit over $1 million completely gutted. Subsection 6 says, at the time of application for an accessory unit, the applicant shall provide proof of owner occupancy of the premises. What does that mean? Well, documents around this time meant driver's license, but looking online, owner occupants are residents that own the property they live at. They own the property they live at. To be considered owner occupied residents usually meant to move into the home within 60 days of closing and live there for a year. That is
Time.
impossible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Springer. Next, we have Kathleen Slinger. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I've got kind of an upper respiratory thing, but thank you for having me. I'm Kathleen Slinger. I live at the property immediately to the north, 1511 North 21st. I bought my house almost 36 years ago. I'm probably the longest resident on the contiguous block. My house is 1 story, 900 square feet with a single car garage in the northwest corner. This ADU as proposed impacts my property more than any other. I don't know, I presented written comments. I don't know, have you people seen them? One of the things I presented was I had a photograph of my backyard and I superimposed the ADU on it. It's 4 times the height of my 6-foot privacy fence, 5 feet from the property line, a dormer window, which is about 5 feet from the property line, looks straight into my backyard that I spend a lot of time with. The way it's proposed right now, it probably takes up the length of about half of my backyard. Given that the size is maintained and a 15-foot setback is required, it's going to impact my yard even more. Ideally, the ADU should be built where the existing garage was. On the other side of that is a 2-car garage. The impact to the yard would not be as severe as mine. And that home is an Airbnb, which has been for several years now. I'm concerned about the tree. I heard Mr. Leach address the tree. I would like to see that in the report. I think the structure needs to be smaller. Again, I'm in a 1-story, 900 square foot home. I love the neighborhood. I want to remain there. I think easily, besides making it smaller, it could be rotated so that the longer side is parallel with the alley and the shorter side, the 24-foot side, is parallel to our shared property line. And if that was the case too, the windows that overlook my backyard would be higher. And I would see the gable end of that 20-some foot structure.
Time.
Rather than the whole 30-foot ridge from my backyard.
Thank you, Ms. Slinger. That's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify this evening? Looks like we have someone online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mitzi. If you could state your name and address for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Mitzi Slack, 707 North 19th Street. There's no doubt that Boise's undergoing unprecedented growth, and as more and more people desire to live in our beautiful downtown neighborhoods, I believe we're facing genuine threats to our historic districts. Historic districts are designations of a group of buildings that together form a historically or architecturally significant area. The designation is intended to preserve the character of the individual homes, but also the district itself. The relationship of buildings to each other, the setbacks, fence patterns, views, trees, and other landscaping together establish the character of a district or a neighborhood. Our homes exist in relationship and symbiosis with one another, and I think it is imperative that we begin to consider the impact of large remodels and new additions on existing homes. The guidelines as set forth by the Interior Secretary instruct that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy the spatial relationships that characterize the property. These are not only the relationships within the property in question, but on the surrounding properties as well. I believe we are failing in this regard. We have relied so heavily on the lot coverage restrictions in the historic neighborhoods that we have allowed massive new remodels that adversely impact the neighborhood and the surrounding historic homes. Not far from my home, a 1,500 square foot non-contributing home was torn down and a 4,000 square foot home has been constructed with a large garage and ADU. This home literally looms over the smaller historic bungalows flanking it. It is out of scale and proportion to the neighborhood and dominates the smaller historic homes now living in the shadow of this new home. This is only one example of many such projects. In my own historic home on 19th Street, a similar massive project is occurring next door. My outdoor spaces, vistas, and privacy have been devastated by that project. My home and many others have been robbed of value and livability to make room for new. Where are the protections for the current homeowners in this historic districts? Where are the protections for Ms. Slinger? Lot coverage does nothing to evaluate the visual impact on the neighbors, the neighborhood, or the district. And relying on this metric is clearly not enough to protect our historic homes and districts. We must begin to consider the impact of these additions, rebuilds, and remodels in a much more comprehensive fashion. I urge you to consider the holistic approach outlined by the Interior Secretary and consider the very real and detrimental impact of this sort of large new construction on neighboring properties. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify this evening? It doesn't appear so. If the applicant would like to come forward, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Deb Leach, once again. I'd like to touch base on the tree. As far as I did mention at the beginning, we had an arborist come out and check out that tree for the foundation. He did assess the impact of trimming that tree. And once again, I can send all that paperwork over from him that's signed by a certified arborist so that you guys have that as well as any other community members. In regards to the owner occupancy, when the owners purchased that property, the house was obviously gutted, like they said. So I had contacted the planning department and discussed with them, what do you do in this situation when the house is unlivable? No toilets, no running water, no electricity, anything. And they said there was you could fill out a waiver and we would discuss it at the time of that ADU permit actually going in. It was my understanding that this is a historical district permit for the residential guidelines and everything that follows with that. And that being that secondary permit, that ADU permit, the accessory structure permit, where they go into that and make sure that you hit all the requirements for that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I do have a question. Can you
Of course.
address the privacy concerns of your neighbors?
The privacy concerns, yes. The neighbor to the north, I can't remember the last name, but that one window, there's one window on that whole wall as far as on that second story. It's in that dormer. What I could do is I could make that a little smaller and make it a little higher so they won't be seeing out into and the sight line will be shooting up. But other than that, I need one window on that wall. It would be very strange if it didn't have a window. But I also need to make sure that that window meets the historical guidelines. So I don't know how much smaller I could get it with doing some, maybe a little, I don't know, 24 by 24.
But that is something, that is something that you're
yeah.
open to
I
and
am,
willing to
yes.
do.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then I guess, are there any other questions for the applicant or Ted at this point?
Do we know?
Yes, this is Commissioner Rupp. I had a quick question, if I may.
Oh, sure, Commissioner Rabb.
Hi. One of the recommendations were, and I didn't know if the architects took into consideration the recommendation of how the garage was laid out and currently how was proposed versus if it could go parallel to the property line. And I don't know if that was anything, or if that is an option, or if that was taken into consideration, recognizing you wanted to move away from the tree.
Yeah, it was taken into consideration, but once again, that tree, that was our main concern, getting as far away from that root line that we could before we start building a foundation, because a digging of a foundation will, any closer could severely impact that tree. And I really don't want to play guessing games with that tree. It's a huge one, and I don't need to deal with that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Malloy.
Yeah, so this may be a question for you or Ted. I'm not sure who will have the answer, but I was wondering if we know the height of the building or the house to the rear.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I don't know the house across the alley.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know the height of that. Maybe the applicant knows that.
I do not have the exact height off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
It is large, and looking into her backyard as well, though.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ted or the applicant? Oh, Commissioner Weaver, please.
A question for Ted. I think there was a couple points brought up by somebody in the audience about some city code items that may not be followed. And I know the only one I can remember being mentioned was something about the size of the accessory unit and garage compared to the size of the lot. Can you speak to any of those?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Weaver. So those are actually the ADU permitting code requirements, I suppose. The percentage of coverage, the percentage of the actual ADU compared to the lot, that is something that is reviewed through. We kind of leave that up to the ADU review process. So they'll review that, and if it goes over that requirement, it can be administrative, or it can be approved by our zoning, our director, our planning director, if it makes sense. So that is a review that will be done through the ADU permitting process. And I think most of the code stuff that was brought up are ADU code issues that will have to be addressed through that process, through that ADU permit process. So if through that ADU permitting process, they're not allowing, something to occur, the excess percentage of ADU compared to the lot, the 10%, then they'll have to make adjustments through that process as well.
Great, thank you.
Any final questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
With that, I will close the public portion of the hearing and we'll consider a motion or discussion.
I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy.
So we can see that there are several issues, I think, that have been brought up by the neighbors. The North End Neighborhood Association, the review from Ted has clearly stated that they have to meet certain conditions of approval. But I'm kind of uncomfortable with all those conditions of approval and not reviewing the final design before it's built. So that's kind of where I stand. I'm not comfortable with the project, approving the project without seeing it again.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. I actually agree with you. I think there's a lot of neighborhood testimony, and I very much appreciate that. I would love to see if we are going to be moving forward with a motion to approve this project, I would love to see that window be scaled down to maximize privacy for the neighbor, if possible, as one of the conditions of approval. I can't make motions, but I would love to see that on there if we're going to be moving forward. Are there any other comments or motions? No one has comments.
Just to add a comment, I have to agree with the fact that we're sifting through a lot here. A lot of different areas of concerns that everyone has mentioned. And I feel that a lot of that probably needs to be sorted out. And I would like to see a different idea come through before it is okayed.
Thank you, Commissioner Pape. Any comments or motions?
I guess I'll make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner Malloy.
All right. I motion to deny DRH 21-00253 based on not meeting the guidelines 6.1.2, where it's generally appropriate to maintain a proportional mass, size, and height to ensure that the accessory building or dwelling unit is not taller than the primary building on the lot or does not occupy the entire backyard. It also does not, it also conflicts with 6.1.10, design the accessory dwelling unit or garage to be visually or to visually compete with or overpower the primary building on the lot. And 6.1.11, add an accessory dwelling unit to a site which does not maintain or blend with the heights or buildings on adjacent sites.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Pape. Victoria, would you please call the roll?
Rupp,
Aye.
Koski,
I recused myself.
oh, thank you. Weaver,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Pape,
Aye.
Montoto,
Aye.
Kintai.
Aye.
Motion carries 6 in favor, 1 recused.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. We will see you at our August hearing.